Hey, before we start this podcast, I want to let you know that Khaki is sponsoring this video. Now, if you don't know what Khaki is a fantastic website where you can buy Thomas products that won't get you price gouged out of your mind. It's really good. I like it a lot. They have some really cheap items. And when I say cheap, I don't mean like, oh, it's poor quality. I mean like price-wise, French kiss. It is so good. They got everything from Play Rail to Erdl, Take Along, Wooden Railway. Now the cheap prices are great, but if you want to save even more money, you can use code PDP10 to save an extra 10% off your first order. And the money that you save using the code goes to supporting me as a creator, so thank you very much if you do that. Even if you don't want to use the code though, it is a fantastic website and I definitely recommend. Anyways, that's all I gotta say. Thank you Khaki for sponsoring the show. Link in the description. Now, on to the main event. Hello and welcome to the Analyzation Express, the show where I read and review a variety of Thomas content that I wouldn't be able to tackle in my normal videos. Today we're going to be taking a look at Sodor Blacked Out, another one of these Sodor Fallout kind of inspired stories. I took a look at Sodor Fallout a little while ago, and I mentioned in that review that there were a lot of these stories that use the same sort of POV, diary style, spooky happenings happening on the island of Sodor with some creepy visual Photoshop stuff to, you know, make things a little spicy. Now, this is an uncompleted story. It's still going as of the time of recording this. It started in December of 2021, which matches up pretty well with when people just started pumping out these stories left and right. I don't know if I'm gonna get through the whole thing. It's not a very long story by the looks of things, so we'll see how far we get with it. Starting things off with separation anxiety, Arthur's POV. Arthur, the big tank engine, was happily working his line at Normanby. He loved the smell of the sea air and the fish in his trucks. One morning, while Arthur was taking some empty coaches to Knapford, he passes Boko at Wellsworth while taking a train from the mainland with some new coal. Arthur was pleased. He knew the supply at the big station was running low, and he knew the other engines would be happy that more coal was arriving. Arthur's day went mostly uneventful. He shunted trucks neatly around the line, and when evening came, he took the empty coaches back to Knapford. He was very surprised when he saw Toby staying at Knapford's sheds. "What are you doing here, Toby?" Arthur asked. "Oh, I'm just here for the night," Toby replied. "I'm taking that new shipment of coal to the quarry tomorrow. I've been sent by the Fat Controller to take some stone back and deliver it to the harbor." "Aye," said Donald. "Toby's planning to stay here for a few nights to check up on the engines at the quarry. He hasn't seen them for quite some time and he says he's excited." I'm so glad that I get to do Donald's voice again. "Donald, why are you here? You're normally up at Tidmouth with the other engines," Arthur said, puzzled. "I know. I had to take half of Boko's train up to the harbour this evening. Edward was stuck down at Brendam for longer than expected, so I was sent down to Wellsworth and took the train," answered Donald. "So Boko and Edward are both down at Brendam with Salty and Cranky?" questioned Arthur. "That's what I've heard from Donald. It seems like the docks ended up in a mess after Salty ran out of fuel yesterday. Stuck in a siding behind so many trucks," said Toby. This is like, already I can feel us turning into a little bit of exposition in the story. As the engine saw the sun go down, they decided it was best to head off to sleep and get a good night's rest. Oh geez, I hope nothing spooky happens. August 15th, 1984. Arthur was woken early by his driver. He could see the sun rising over the horizon, and the hiss of steam filled the air as the three engines' fireboxes were lit. Arthur spent the day ferrying passengers up and down the little line to go to the shops and visit the beautiful beaches. He was very happy with the world as it was. That night, as he returned, Donald had left and returned to Tidmouth, and in his place were Ben and Mavis. "Toby, I thought you said you hadn't seen the engines at the quarry in a while," capital S said Arthur, quite surprised at the two smaller engines he was now sleeping with. Ooh, wording. "Ben and Mavis said Bill didn't seem right after I had left. He went silent and spent the whole day working productively rather than playing tricks like he usually does," answered Toby. "You mean he was being a productive member of society?" Perish the thought. "Bill seemed very scary to me," replied Ben. "I don't feel comfortable around him." "I hope he's okay," said Mavis. "He never acts like that. Lowercase h, he's always involved with Ben in some way, but today he was always alone." Just then, an engine puffed up from the dark. Quickly at first, but soon moved slower as it approached the sheds. Eventually, it reached the light where they were visible. "Hey Ben," capital S said the engine. "Want to go shunt some more trucks at the quarry? Spooky ghost?" Now we're going into chapter 1B. Oh boy, it's gonna be one of these stories. 2 congruent plots. Okay, this is actually, okay, to be fair, I might be riffing on the story a little bit so far, but this is what I was talking about with the Never Be Alone story, where it's like 2 separate stories that have plots that run congruently through them. While I don't love the idea of chapter 1A and 1B, this is a hell of a lot better than just trying to mash everything together into one chapter. Chapter 1B, Little Western Mess, Toad's POV. Toad and Oliver were enjoying the day running up and down along the coast, getting to view all the wonderful sights and enjoying the sea air. In the afternoon, Oliver had to collect some trucks from the harbor to bring up the line. When Toad was shunted to the rear of his train, he saw a singular truck staring blankly into the distance, mouth agape. "Mr. Oliver," he said, "I think something's wrong with this coal truck. It's not making noises like all the others." "Oh, don't worry so much, Toad," replied Oliver. "The less these trucks bump us around, the faster we can get done with our jobs." "But Mr. Oliver, I think there's something very wrong." "This isn't normal," answered Toad. "It's just a truck staring at something. Is it even connected to the train? Anyway, it isn't normal." When they arrived at the station, Oliver ran around to take Toad away for the next delivery. He saw the coal truck. Its eyes blackened out, oh that's disconcerting, with a wide open smile like Toad had described. Toad did not describe a wide open smile. "Huh, I guess you were right, Toad," said Oliver. "This doesn't really seem right. We should talk to Duck about this when we see him next." Later that night, Oliver pulled up to the station and was surprised to find Duck at the platform. "You're not usually out this late, Duck. What's happened?" asked Oliver. "Oh, a signalman's got me stuck with a goods train at Tidmouth. I didn't get out until 20 minutes ago," replied Duck. "Mr. Duck," butt in Toad. "But today we've seen a coal truck." I think an excuse me before Mr. Duck might have made that flow a little bit better. "But today we've seen a coal truck with strange looking eyes, acting very different than normally." You could just say acting very different. "We were wondering if you think we should tell the Fat Controller about this." "Oh, don't worry, Toad. I'm sure everything's fine. After all, it didn't get in the way of your work, so why should you be bothered about this?" said Duck. Toad wasn't satisfied. When he and Oliver returned to the shed, they decided to put it behind them and go to sleep. It wasn't until morning when Toad noticed something very different. Oliver had been steamed up, hours before he was planned to go out. When his driver arrived, they didn't take any notice to the heat of the firebox being more than usual on an average weekday morning. That's a strangely worded sentence if I've ever seen one. Throughout the day, Oliver and Toad stayed silent. Oliver appeared to be smiling, but Toad couldn't see his face all day. When they passed Duck later on, he could see a clear sign of distress from Toad. That evening, Duck had arrived late once again. His goods were longer than usual, due to a mishap that day that left Duck stranded at Wellsworth. "Toad," said Duck, "what had you so bothered earlier today?" "It's Mr. Oliver," replied Toad. I think I just changed Toad's voice on the fly. "He hasn't spoken to me all day, and it seems that he's been smiling an awful lot more than he usually does." "It doesn't surprise me, Toad," answered Duck. "Oliver's eyes have gone all dark." "Hey, Duck, you should have led with that, my boy. Oliver's eyes have gone all dark. I feel like if someone... There's no one picked up on this until now. And what was that about the truck yesterday? You said it wasn't acting like itself?" "Yes, Mr. Duck," shouted Toad. "If Oliver had those black eyes too, then maybe something terrible has happened." "Oh, don't worry so much," said Duck. "After all, he hasn't done anything..." "Hello, Duck. I didn't see you there," said Oliver in a strange voice. "Mr. Oliver?" "Hello, Toad. I'm glad to be able to see you again. I've been wondering where you've been all day," replied Oliver. "Oliver, you do know that you've been with Toad all day. Why haven't you spoken to him?" said Duck. But Oliver didn't respond. When the pair arrived back at the shed, Toad was still unhappy, no comments at all. When Oliver's driver closed the door to the shed and put out the lamp, that's strange, Toad was scared. Something's wrong there. He was afraid of Oliver now. He heard a puffing noise coming from in front of him, and a shining bright light filled his vision. "Come on, Toad," whispered Duck. "We've got to get to Tidmouth Sheds at once. I don't know what's going on, but this isn't Oliver. Isn't Oliver, like, literally right beside you?" "All right, Mr. Duck," replied Toad, "on your lead," and the two set off through the night towards Tidmouth. Chapter 2A, The Blackened-Eyed Piece. Arthur's POV. "Bill?" asked Ben. "How did you get here? Our drivers left hours ago. You should still be at the quarry." "It's okay, Ben," replied Bill. "We're just going to shunt trucks and have some fun." Bill slowly crept towards Ben, his constant smile slowly turning into a frown. Wait, then it wasn't a constant smile. "Do you not want to shunt trucks, Ben?" asked Bill. Ben stayed silent. This wasn't the Bill he'd known all his life. The face that was staring at him was another entity, someone nobody had ever known. A whistle sounded from the dark, and a long engine backed down towards the sheds, coupling up to Bill and taking him away down the line. He was gone just as quickly as he arrived. "That's what happened to Bill?" yelled Toby. "That's more than just weird. His eyes are all black." "We didn't know it was that serious," answered Mavis. "He spent the whole day away from us and we didn't feel comfortable staying with him tonight." What was the point of Bill being there? Nothing happened. Also, wouldn't the workmen notice if Bill's eyes were completely black? "We can't do anything now," he replied. "We've got to stay here the night. We won't know what's going to happen until we can see him." What? We won't know what's going to happen to him until we can see him. The night was mostly uneventful for them. No more engines came up to the shed, and no more surprises were to be had. Oh, I'm sure that's about to change. Arthur woke up earlier than the others, prepared to take a special service down the Norrumby line for the scenic view. As he ran down the line, he saw Neville stopped at Kronk without a train or anyone else in sight. Arthur pulled up to the station next to Neville. "Hey Neville, what are you doing down here?" "You don't take goods trains this far," started Arthur as he looked towards Neville. He had black eyes as well. His smile scared Arthur, and he seemed to be silent. Neville started up and raced back towards Marin. Arthur wanted to do something to help, but he couldn't. Well, help who? As Arthur approached Croven's gate for his final stop before the branch line, he saw Sir Handel in the shed. He was chained to the post on the outdoor shed, like a dog, I imagine, and he also had black eyes. "Hey, Stuart, want to go help Grandpuff pull his train up the mountain?" asked Sir Handel, to no one in particular. The thin controller was nearby on the platform, talking to some workmen when he ran over and scolded Sir Handel for acting out of line and not following orders once again. The guard blew his whistle and Arthur left the little engine on his own once again. And the significance of that scene was... Finally, Arthur made his way to the Norrumby branch line. All day, he couldn't stop thinking about Neville's eyes or Sir Handel's uncanny speech at Croven's gate. What was going on? As he passed by Gordon's hill, he saw Neville again, holding up Gordon on the hill with his return train from Vickerstown. "Neville, get out of the way! I need to get to Knapford!" yelled Gordon in anger. "Sorry, Gordon," Neville said sadly. "I didn't mean to get in your way." His dialogue is quality. But Arthur couldn't stop to help them. Again, how would he help them? When he arrived at Knapford, Toby, Mavis, and Ben were staying the night once again. He was glad to have the company, but confused as to why they were staying the night once more. When dusk was falling upon the station, Gordon arrived at the sheds, tired and weary, looking a bit bruised. Neville was nowhere to be found. "Fair warning to you all," said Gordon, panting. "Don't go near them." So far, the story is a little shaky, but it's slowly building up the tension. I can respect that. There's something going on with the engines. It's not just suddenly, hey, look at this. There's a thing happening and it's spooky and scary. I do appreciate the slow burn. Chapter 2b, Tidmouth Tumble, Toad's POV. Duck and Toad arrived at Tidmouth very late. It was pitch black outside, with the lights from inside the sheds illuminating the track around them. Duck went to the open berth, taking Toad with him. Inside the sheds, Gordon, James, and Murdoch were chatting about the day. "I passed by Croven's gate this afternoon," said Gordon. "Sir Handel was at the sheds instead of working like normal. Apparently he's gone silent, and nobody can make him speak. Say that he has bitch steamroller wheels and that'll get a rise out of him." "Oh, that's quite strange," answered Murdoch. "I've never had time to stop there, but from what I've heard, he's normally quite the grump." "Oh, don't worry so much," said James. "He's just trying to annoy the engines around him. It's probably nothing serious." "Maybe, but Oh, hello, Duck." "And Toad," replied Gordon. "Hello, Mr. Gordon," said Toad. "Sorry to burst in, but Mr. Oliver has been acting strange, and I don't really feel good around him." "What's happening? Is he just making foolish jokes?" Capital L laughed James. "I'm afraid not, James," said Duck. "He's gotten some strange black eyes. Someone's just been punching him in the face like no tomorrow." And just in case you're wondering, when they say black eyes, they're talking about taking a picture into Photoshop and covering over the eyes with the black paint tool. "I'm not afraid, James," said Duck. "He's gotten some strange black eyes." Toad said he didn't say anything until we met at the station. "Yes, that's quite right. Mr. Oliver changed this morning," answered Toad. "So wait, Gordon, did they say anything else about Sir Handel?" asked James, capital A. "Well, they said that his eyes have changed color, but didn't go into too much detail," said Gordon. "Is that why you guys are here? Because Oliver was acting strange?" questioned Murdoch. "Yes, Murdoch," said Duck. "I'm going to keep Toad with me for as long as possible until things start to improve." Soon, Henry arrived at the sheds. "Sorry for being so late, everyone. I got caught up at Knapford with something," he said. "It's all right, Henry. As long as you're okay, then it's fine." "Have you heard what's going on with some of the engines?" asked Gordon. "I have. Apparently Sir Handel has black eyes. They've chained him up outside of the Skarloey engine shed because he was moving around." Henry replied. I like that idea. It's just, we could put like a brake van in front of him and set the brakes, but no, let's chain him up like the wild animal he is. That's more than one engine with the strange black eyes and movement, said Toad. Are you guys going to stay up all night and talk about this? Asked James. I'd really like to get some sleep tonight. What do you expect Sir Topham Hatt to give you the express tomorrow? Gordon laughed. I feel like a comma in there would make things a little bit better. Maybe he will, James yawned. Maybe he will, missing a close quote. The next day, Duck and Toad took goods trains along the loop line. He knew the twins could handle anything up there, and Oliver should still be working. At Toyrek, they saw a bruised Bill sitting in a siding near a goods station. He was smiling and his eyes were glazed over with black. Ben, remember that time we saved all those workmen from the collapse? He said to no one in particular. Duck looked over in confusion and disbelief that the other engine had turned like Oliver. He quickly hurried away. That night at the sheds, Duck and Toad entered and saw Gordon was missing from the group. Where's Gordon? Duck asked. James looked over to Duck with fear on his face. We don't know. Chapter 3A, All's Wellsworth, and the cover is cranky with those same hollow eyes. I will give the guy credit, he's done some pretty good Photoshop to make these eyes look as hollowed out as possible. Them? Who's them? Asked Toby. The ones with the eyes, replied Gordon. They're more dangerous than you think. What do you mean? Yesterday we saw Bill with the eyes and all he did was scare us, said Mavis. The same thing has happened across the entire island. Nobody knows what's going on, said Gordon. I had to rush here. Neville was chasing me. I don't know where he is anymore. Well, as far as we know, they're fine, replied Arthur. Wait, as far as who's fine? We clearly aren't hurt, and neither are you. You can say that, but they can hurt you, answered Gordon. The engines fell silent. August 17th, 1984. Arthur and Ben headed to Wellsworth. They needed to talk to Edward, and Ben didn't want to stay in the quarry anymore. So Ben, can you tell me about Bill? Asked Arthur. Well, Bill is my twin. We really like to pull jokes on engines. But I don't really feel in the mood now that he's like that, answered Ben. I see. Do you know Edward as well? Said Arthur. Edward is a really great friend of mine. We used to work down at the China clay pits before an accident happened. That's why I work at the quarry with Mavis, replied Ben. At Wellsworth Yards, many open wagons had the black eyes, some of which were chanting to bump engines off the rails. The rest of the trucks, however, were very frightened by them and had fallen silent. What is going on? This is a very strange sight to see, commented Arthur. I don't know, replied Ben. It's never looked like this before. Just then, Boko pulled up to the station. He had flatbeds of salvaged metal from the docks down at the end of the line. At the end of this train was a very unhappy Salty. Boko? Salty? What's going on? Asked Ben. Well, you see me, hearties. Crankty has started acting strange, said Salty. Edward can't seem to figure out what's wrong with him. He's got strange black eyes and he's been really quiet, replied Boko. This has all happened right after he got some diesel fuel this morning. He hasn't been the same since, Salty whispered. Well, where are these parts going? Asked Arthur. They don't seem to be of any use. We're bringing them to Kronk for Murdoch to take to the ironworks. He should be able to deliver them by the end of the night, said Boko. Well, okay, but what's happened to the trucks at the station? Questioned Ben. We don't know, mateys. We just got here, replied Salty. Yeah, obviously. Okay, well, see you later then. We're heading down to see Edward and ask him a few things, said Arthur. Have a good one. As Arthur and Ben left the station, a few more trucks slowly died down with their chanting. As if trucks had died down with their chanting to begin with? What? Chapter 3B, Broken Van, Toad's POV. I feel like this story might read a little bit better if I read all the A chapters and then all the B chapters. I'm not sure. Mr. Gordon hasn't returned, asked Toad. No, I haven't seen him since I left for Vickerstown this afternoon, said Henry. The last I saw him, he was stuck on his hill with Neville in the way. When I was returning, he was gone, no comma, replied James. Where did Neville end up? Do you know? Said Duck. Why do you think I would know? I'm not Neville. Well, wherever Gordon is, I hope he's okay, finished Murdoch. The sheds fell silent once again. Everyone was worried and nobody knew what to say. The next day, August 17th, 1984. When Toad awoke, a few of the engines were still in the shed. Duck was assigned to take passengers on Thomas's branch line after Toby got into some trouble with trucks. Donald took Toad... Wait, Donald's with them? Okay. Donald took Toad with him to Duck's branch line to spend some time near the sea air, just where Toad wants to be, anywhere near Oliver. Thank you, Mr. Donald, for taking me back here, although I'm still worried that Mr. Oliver won't be back to normal, said Toad. Hi, don't you worry, we'll break then. Oliver will be right as rain again, alright? Replied Donald. I'm gonna say the last time I heavily voiced Donald and Douglas, it was written with the Scottish accent in mind. This time it's not, and it's really throwing me off. Douglas and Oliver were up near Arlsberg when they arrived. I don't know why Arlsberg is such a weird name. Oliver hadn't changed at all like Donald had said, and even worse, Douglas had now gained the black eyes. I hope the big plot twist is that they're just contacts and it's a big funny prank. Toad broke down in tears when he saw his two greatest friends changed into these hollow shells of who they once were. How did he see them if he was behind Duck? "Hello, Donald. Hello, Toad," said Oliver. "It's nice to see you here again. We've missed you." "Mr. Oliver, Mr. Douglas, what's going on?" asked Toad. "We're just helping make the railway a better place, that's all," missing a comma, replied Douglas, as he shunted trucks behind Donald to block them in. "Hey, Dougie, stop doing that," yelled Donald. "This isn't very safe if you're helping the railway." "It's okay, the Fat Controller said we can do this," answered Oliver. "Don't worry." Donald was very frightened. Toad had his brakes hard on and was blinded by his tears. Donald tried to back out, but Toad's brakes prevented him from leaving. "Toad, you fucking prick." "I'm sorry, no comma, Mr. Oliver. This is all my fault," cried Toad. "Toad, release your brakes," yelled Donald. "But what about Mr. Oliver?" whimpered Toad. "We can't just leave him." "If we don't get out of here, we're probably in bigger trouble than him," answered Donald. Toad released his brakes, and Donald plowed through the trucks, knocking Douglas back and startling Oliver as well. "Wait, Donald, come back," said Oliver calmly. No comma between Oliver and calmly. Donald didn't go back. He didn't stop running until he reached Tidmouth. The platform was deserted and the yard was empty. There was not an engine or truck in sight. Donald quietly filled up on more coal at the hopper on the nearby station. "I'm very sorry, Toad. I'm gonna have to leave you in the yard for now. I'll try to put you behind the station where you can't be seen," said Donald. "I have to go now." "Bye, Mr. Oliver. Good luck," whispered Toad, still crying after seeing Oliver and Douglas turn into his worst fears. He's very scared of the black, hollow eyes. Okay, I think I'm going to stop the story here. Honestly, there's not a whole lot of technical bugaboos with this one. There's a few areas where I think some punctuation could be switched around a little bit, but the dialogue honestly doesn't seem too bad. It's a little bit vague and awkward at certain points, but it's definitely not outlandish. My biggest problem with this one is that conversations just kind of seem to happen with no flow or expression from the characters. You'll see, like, "Mr. Gordon hasn't returned yet," asked Toad. "No, he hasn't," said Henry, and then so on and so forth. One thing that I think is very important for writing stories like this is that when characters are having a conversation, have them react or emote in some way. So like, if I were to rewrite this little bit here, I'd say, "Mr. Gordon hasn't returned yet?" asked Toad, perplexed. It wasn't like Gordon to not be punctual, but the big green engine's expression was telling. "No, I haven't seen him since he left for Vickerstown," Henry replied. James raised an eyebrow. "The last time I saw him was when he was stuck on the hill with Neville in his way." Something like that. Something just to make conversation a little more than just dialogue, replied. It makes things flow just a little bit better. Now, I always say that having too much detail is a bad thing, and I do stand by that, but not having enough detail can make the story kind of hard to get into. It's a very delicate balance that you have to have. You also have to keep in mind on having the right details at the appropriate times, or else things just feel way too bloated. In saying that though, I don't think that this story is all that bad. It does take a lot of inspiration from Sodor Fallout in terms of its formatting, but I do appreciate how it isn't the same old, "Oh, I'm a driver for X engine and I just had this journal and I decided to randomly start writing in it, and then the next day a weird spooky thing happens," which I've honestly seen with more than a few of these fanfics. In all, I think this one's pretty good, and if you want to check it out, the link is in the description. That's going to do it for me for today. I want to say thank you for watching, thank you to Kaki for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.